Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, and for today's episode, part 5 of how to make great videos, we're going to be talking about working with different dimensions from 2D, 3D animated text, looking a little bit at Character Animator, and then wrapping up a bit with some 360 VR Ambisonic workflows. So let me just go ahead and switch my screen over here, and we will get started. We're going to begin today, as mentioned, in Premiere Pro. So as mentioned, we're going to start with talking about working with Photoshop files. And one of the really cool things that we offer in Premiere Pro, among many, is, again, that you've got this native PSD support. I'm going to bring in a Photoshop file, a nice layered Photoshop file. And I start that by going up to the File menu here, and I can go into Import, or if I were at my Project panel, I can simply double-click. None of this is going to be new to you, of course. So here I've got a layered PSD. You can see it's a PSD file, approximately 132 megs here. And let's go ahead and import this. And when I do that, this is really where now Premiere Pro kind of showcases some of the awesomeness with working with Photoshop files. With all other NLEs, you're going to have to make some kind of compromise when working with Photoshop layers. But we give you a lot of flexibility as to how you work with them. And if you're doing any kind of design on the Photoshop side, which most are, you can take that design and, again, leverage that and animate that and treat that inside of Premiere Pro, even if you're not totally comfortable working in After Effects, right? So here we have in the import dialog a couple of different options. Now you'll see the first one here is to merge all layers. And that does simply just that. You can have a Photoshop file with dozens of layers in it, and this will bring it in as basically one clip, if you can imagine, okay? So therefore, you're not going to be able to turn on or turn off anything, right? If you want to say, oh, I've got this, separate adjustment layer or background image or something, I want to turn that off. You won't be able to do that if you import everything as merge all layers. So again, that's going to take all the layers in your Photoshop file, my fingers representing layers here, and merge it all together so you just have one, okay? Now, what if you want to select the layers that you want to bring in? If we go to merged layers, now what you have the option and the ability to do is to individually select the layers that you want to import. Okay, so again, like I don't need the background per se, and maybe I only want, and I don't need this logo piece here, and I don't need the tab rectangle tool, whatever it is, you get the idea. You can choose the layers you want. Now, again, upon doing that, the same thing sort of applies. It's going to then bring everything in based on the ones you selected as one single clip that you can then treat and process. But you're treating all those layers at the same time. And once it's imported from within Premiere, there's no disabling. Now, one of the things I will show you, and I'll bring this in a couple times, you can always edit original and go back to Photoshop. It'll reveal all the layers. You can make a change, and whatever changes you make over there are back in Premiere Pro, regardless of how you import. So this is actually very, very cool. Now, you've got two other options here. The third is individual layers, self-explanatory there. Obviously, you can bring them in as individual pieces, or you can import all of your layers, or all of your selected layers in this case, as a sequence. So what is that going to do? Well, it's going to create a sequence for you, and it's going to take every layer of your Photoshop file and place it in its own video track, treating it as if each layer is a separate video clip. So this is kind of an ideal way if you want to do, imagine you're creating now, of course, we have the Essential Graphics panel now, which allows you to do amazing titles and intros and things like that, all kinds of motion graphics. But a lot of times your designer or even you might be creating, already a 16:9 sort of, movie card poster type look for whatever it is that you're building. You've done this in Photoshop. I don't want to have to recreate the wheel. I would just like to be able to fly things in, blur things in. I've got my text. I have my typekit fonts. All this stuff already done. Now you can bring it in as a sequence with all of those layers as tracks, and then you can apply the associated effects or whatever it is to them and kind of, again, just sort of keep working. So this is a really effective way to do it. So let's go ahead and do just that. Let's bring in all of these layers as a sequence, and I'll leave everything turned on for now. I'm going to click OK. All right. So now that we've brought in those Photoshop layers as a sequence, here's what you get. And you can see that it creates a folder for you, so it keeps everything nicely organized. It's built a sequence for you. So there's your sequence, all right, based on the settings of the Photoshop file. So you'll notice here the sequence is 1800 by 2700. So first of all, it's vertical. But remember, Premiere Pro works beautifully with vertical video, vertical anything, any kind of dimension in this case. So we can do that just fine. Of course, it's not going to conform to our 1080p widescreen right now, but I'll show you how we can work around that. And then, of course, all of the various layers here appear as, again, sort of image files, still images. These will all be contained in the sequence itself. So if I go ahead and double-click on the sequence here, it opens up this new sequence. Now you can see everything revealed. And here, if I just, let me just drag this down. Obviously, as we play this back inside the timeline, nothing is happening. There's nothing here. So this is now where we can, on this sequence, perhaps start to do some animation, all right? And again, I'm just going to show you very quickly. We'll just do some very basic opacity things just to showcase that all of your PSD layers can be processed and affected just as if they were video clips. So I believe V1 here is going to be that white background, all right? So we can leave that as it is. Layer 2, that's the bottom image of our artist Jesse Boykins III here. So let's say we want to do something very simple, like just kind of animate this in, all right, after about a second. So I'm going to go up to my effects controls here. Like I said, just going to do some very basic opacity things. Let's go ahead and set a keyframe, and we'll wind this back. I'll drop this down. And again, we just kind of animate that image of Jesse onto the screen. All right, and we'll do the same for a couple of these, and you'll see why in just a moment. Okay, so V3 is that top image of Jesse. Now this one I definitely want to animate on. So once again, we'll do a little keyframe here on this one. Make sure we're on the right layer. We are, layer 3. All right, set a keyframe, wind it back like this. Boom, boom. Okay, they fly on. And then perhaps we can have some of these other layers fly on after that. And you'll see why in just a second, because what I'm planning on doing here is actually overlaying this as an intro over top of a video interview where we have Jesse. All right. So come up to this next one. I'm guessing this is the bottom. Yep, this is that little piece right here. Go ahead, set a keyframe there. Again, wind it back. Maybe we'll have that appear, start to appear right around that time. Everything kind of fills in. All right. Oh, and that's cool. That's kind of a little color adjustment layer. I like that. So let's go ahead and we'll do the same thing on that one here. Wind that back. And you can see that the max there was 74. And we'll take that down to around 30, 40. That's good. Okay. And you get the idea. We can continue to do whatever we want here. Additionally, if we wanted to add effects or blur or whatever it is, again, I can pull up my effects. Let's go ahead and drag this up here. Let's go into something like a blur. And yeah, let's just grab something like a Gaussian blur here. Just sort of showing you if we wanted to blur that on as well. Maybe move that keyframe back over to here. All right, and if we step back a bit, so it kind of blurs on along with the opacity change, okay? So you get the idea. Again, you're treating this now as if it were video, okay? Which is pretty cool. So now what we want to do is let's actually bring this into the sequence in question. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start this. Let's start this at around 60, like that. And you'll see why. Okay, so here I have a timeline that we've been working on, and you'll see if I go ahead and play this back, this is a little section of the interview with Jesse. So take a quick listen, or you take a quick look here. We're not focused on audio today. I don't even have it going through the stream right now. So take a quick listen here.
When I think of play, I think of my childhood. When I think of my childhood, I think of when there was no boundaries, when there was no one telling me what I could and couldn't do as far as my imagination goes, my creativity goes. To me, when I say play, I mean
all right. So there's Jesse. Okay. So as I was saying, what I want to do is overlay that graphic of Jesse. We're going to do that by nesting the sequence into this main sequence here. So if we go back to the project panel, I can take this one that we just created. And let's go ahead and drag this in to V5 like this. All right, right about here. Actually, I'm going to move this up 2 frames. Snap that right there. Okay. Now, obviously, as we mentioned, this is not exactly the right dimension. First of all, this is vertical. Everything else is horizontal, 16:9. So one of the things that I might want to do first is kind of fill the frame with this horizontally. So I'm just going to scale this up a bit so that the background edges kind of line up here. And again, that looks, it's already centered for me. And then I'm also going to bring this to the top, because what I want to do is kind of fade things on and kind of gradually move down and then sort of dissolve out of this static graphic into the video. All right, and this is just showing you how we're just implementing Photoshop layers, again, imported from Photoshop, animated here in Premiere, dropped over top of some existing video. So we can start, we'll start with the position here, okay? And maybe by about there, this is where we want to be to sort of get to the bottom, you know, get to the end. All right, something like that. We even have the option here to do a little temporal interpolation, so we can, you know, ease into the stopping point there. We can also do Bezier or continuous Bezier, so again, just kind of smoother, less linear movement. Going to ease in there. And we've just done a little simple animation here where you will now see, notice he blurs in, the other images blur. Now we may want to space those out. Notice they sort of came on too fast. And by the way, that blur and the opacity shift right there on Jesse, right? This is what we set on the sequence when we imported it. Maybe we want these to come in a little bit later. Maybe we want to add a blend mode to those, okay? Maybe we want to add a blend mode to this whole thing. So again, we could do something like an overlay or a screen. That might be a little too much, although actually maybe that kind of works. Let's see. All right, and then maybe we'll have it, you know, dissolve out right around here. So I'll just come into our video transitions, go into dissolve. I'm simply going to click and drag across dissolve on here. All right, and what we can also do, the screen is too much. Overlay is kind of a little intense, but yeah, I mean, that kind of works. Again, stylistically, I'll leave the good design skill to you guys, all right? But you get the idea, right? We're working with Photoshop files. Now, as I mentioned, you not only have the ability to import and decide how you want to work with those Photoshop files, but you also have the ability here to create a Photoshop file directly. So what's awesome about that is that it's going to take all of the attributes of the sequence of the project that you're working in and automatically take those attributes and build the Photoshop file in the correct frame size, frame rate, pixel aspect ratio. So just to showcase that to you, let's go up to the File menu here, and under New, Photoshop File, here's how you can do that, all right? And we'll go ahead and we'll click OK on this, Video Settings, OK. We'll give it a name, How to Make Great Video, JB3. We don't want that. and it's going to start launching Photoshop. Now, while it's doing that, let me go ahead and see, where do we want to place this? Maybe we'll do like a, I don't know, some kind of lower third or something here, whatever it is. Doesn't really matter. I may not even actually make it now. The point is, once you're in Photoshop, you see it just launched here. Now, here's your 1920, 1080, 23976 frame, okay? So again, if we wanted to do some very, whatever it is, whatever you build in Photoshop, simple text, let's just go ahead and we'll type something here. First of all, let's scale this up. Let's change the color. All right, and we'll say Jesse Boykins the third. Okay. Double click on this. Let's go ahead and let's make this even bigger. Let's make this 110. And let's change this to medium. Well, actually, you know what? I kind of like it thinner. Let's go light. Ah, heck, extra light. Why not? All right. And let's stick that down there. And while we're at it, I'll just add a drop shadow just so that it kind of pops out a little bit more. Not that I'm always the fan of the drop shadow, but it's okay. Like that. All right. Very simply, go ahead and save this. Okay. Back into Premiere. Here is the PSD that we just created. Go ahead and drag this onto a new layer. Turn the layer on, and there it is. Okay. And notice the drop shadow and everything that we applied to that is there. Okay. Now, I'm just going to show you this real quickly. Let's say that we actually wanted to animate this text, or you had animated text coming from the Photoshop side. So I'm just going to quickly turn off my camera so you can see the timeline here a little bit better, so I don't get in the way. All right, so similarly, we're going to twirl down the layer here, and we're going to click on, let's see, transform, maybe a little bit faster than that. Okay. Let's go ahead and wind this back, place this keyframe over here. I'm going to take this, let's drag this off screen like that. Okay. So now we've got some animated text flying on. Again, linear interpolation, hold interpolation, very similar, functions very similarly to the way that we just did things on the Premiere Pro side. Let's go ahead and save that, okay? And we could even close it if we want to. My point is that now when we click back to Premiere Pro, there we go, okay? So now you're seeing, again, the changes that we just made there applied inside of Premiere Pro. And furthermore, as mentioned, let's say that we closed this. Again, I can right-click here, edit original, and when I do that, it opens up inside of Photoshop. And however many layers, however many pieces of animation, whatever it is that we've done, it's all here. All right? Pretty cool. So let's go ahead and turn the camera back on now. All right, so that's working with sort of 2D, flat layers, Photoshop files, and integrating them into Premiere Pro. Now let's go ahead and segue over to After Effects and talk a little bit about making some 3D text. Now again, this is something which of course you can do in Photoshop, and many of you will be very familiar with that workflow. Many of you probably have never tried it in After Effects and thought it was a little too difficult. Well, something that we introduced last year to make, in particular, 3D extruded text and shapes a heck of a lot easier and very intuitive was to introduce the Cinema4D render engine. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, Cinema4D is a 3D authoring application. You can do 3D models, all kinds of incredible 3D things, 3D objects, of course. And it's integrated directly into After Effects. We actually have a 3D pipeline, not unlike a dynamic link from After Effects to Cinema4D. And in fact, Cinema4D Lite actually ships with After Effects. So when you download the trial of After Effects CC 2017, you'll actually see up in the file menu here that you have the ability to create a new Cinema4D file. And this will automatically launch Cinema4D Lite for you. And if you license After Effects or the entire Creative Cloud suite of apps, you will have Cinema4D Lite pre-installed for you, and you can do this very cool workflow back and forth. Now, we're gonna touch upon that a little bit. I just want to show you some really basic techniques for building some 3D extruded text. And it's kind of changed the way that even I do 3D text completely, because this is something I generally never would have done before, largely because it was just a little too intimidating. Now, before we even start, I just want to point out here that, so I have a very simple text layer and a background layer here in After Effects. And in fact, here, let me go ahead and switch this over. Okay. All right, so text layer, background layer. Let me go ahead and just kind of showcase to you, if we do Command K or Control K on the PC, this brings you into the composition settings. Now I'm just bringing you here to point this out to kind of show you where you can find a couple of options here with regard to 3D, and just kind of talk about them very briefly. So this is all the details of the comp, and you can see, again, I'm doing a standard 1080, 16:9, square pixels, 24 frames, 7 seconds in duration. The background color of this, if there's nothing in the comp, is white. That can, of course, you can change that. Under advanced, you have different options for working with motion blur. We're not going to touch upon this right now, but what I did want to focus on was the 3D renderer. Now, what's cool is by default now, we actually default to using the Cinema4D renderer. And as you can see, if you look at what that entails, it enables extrusion of text and shapes. Remember that After Effects works beautifully with vector shape layers. Again, you can introduce and import Illustrator files directly into After Effects and animate them and preserve the vectors. It says, and this is the preferred renderer for extruded 3D work on most computers. I didn't notice that before. What does it enable? Extruded and beveled text and shapes, reflections, curved footage layers, environment layers and reflections, material overrides. Okay. This is the default. Now, the previous 3D method was classic 3D. This is kind of what we refer to as kind of 2.5D, because actually it wasn't true 3D. You were really just manipulating 2D layers in a 3D space, or rather projecting light and shadows onto, like, you know, a flat postcard, right? It wasn't really 3D. This is why we then introduced the integration with Cinema4D, and of course, many of you, I'm sure, have worked with Maya and some of the other 3D applications to actually implement true 3D models into your After Effects comps. But now with the Cinema4D render engine, particularly where we're talking about text and shapes, you have that ability right inside the app. You never have to leave the app, and it's really easy to do. All right, super, super easy to do, and I'm going to show you the easiest way just to start to implement some 3D extruded text here. So again, by default, you create a text layer simply by choosing the text tool up at the top, which now, of course, Premiere Pro has the horizontal type tool, much like Photoshop, as well as the vertical type tool. So you just type right on screen. You can see I've used my favorite color, orange, here. Oh, and by the way, it's worth pointing out, so what happens if you get the full version, or you're working with the full version of Cinema4D already? Remember, I just showed you Edit Original with Photoshop. Well, obviously, you have Edit Original on Cinema4D files, but by default, they're going to go to the Lite version, which is pre-installed. So if we go up to Options here, oh, sorry, not under Options, under About? No, where is it? Is it under Options? Choose Installation, yes. So now we've made it very easy for you to tell After Effects what version do you want to launch. So if you have the full version of C4D, previously to associate C4D files via Edit Original with the full version of Cinema4D, that was like an OS level change that you had to make. Now you can do it directly from within After Effects. So again, we heard your feedback there and tried to make it a bit easier. Okay, so you ready? So we typed a text layer. Very simple. First thing you're going to do is you're going to enable 3D for the comp here, all right? So if you don't have this on already, you want to click on this box, this cube. And then for all the layers that you want to be in 3D space, similarly, you're going to turn on this switch. And the nice thing is we've got all these tooltips here that show you exactly what you want to do, allows this layer to be manipulated in 3 dimensions, okay? So you're going to turn on that for 3D text. Now, you're looking at that right now and you're going, oh, it doesn't really look any different. Okay, well, let's go ahead and twirl this down. Twirl down the options here. And now what you'll see is that you have geometry options. And when we twirl down geometry options, you'll see that you now have bevel depth, whole bevel depth, and extrusion depth. So let me go ahead and back out here. If we simply now take extrusion depth and start dragging this out and expanding it, now you can see we can begin to extrude that text, all right? Very, very simply. If you want to add a bevel, do the same thing here. Let's go ahead and bevel this a little bit. What kind of bevel style? Angular? Ooh, maybe not. Concave? Convex? Okay, whichever. Again, I'll leave the styling up to you. Go ahead and grab our rotation tool up here. And just to kind of showcase to you what's happening, all right? This is true, real, 3D extruded text done in a matter of seconds right here in After Effects. Okay, and again, maybe we'll just cut back on that on that bevel. That's even a little hard for me to look at. Now, taking that a step further, of course, you naturally, if you go under material options here, here's where, again, now I would recommend going to some of our CC Learn channels. We're not going to do that on today's episode. We've got too much to cover. But here's where you can really understand how light and reflections start to affect the text and shapes that you're working with. Speaking of, what if we wanted to make a new shape here? Well, let's go up to the new layer menu and we'll do a shape layer. Again, just trying to point out the same sort of thing here. If we go up to our tools, rectangles, ellipse, polygon, whatever. So let's just choose our rounded rectangle tool. Go ahead and drag one of these out. All right, again, my amazing skills. Once again, though, if we want this to be in 3D, all we need to do here, because we've already got it enabled for the comp, we just need to enable this for the layer, all right? And then right away, that's going to change. Let's go ahead and add some geometry options here. Let's extrude that, okay? And similarly, again, we can transform this. There's our shape layer with its extrusion, okay? Again, if we wanted to place some additional bevel on here, do that. Let's go into angular on this one, okay? And you get the idea very quickly. All right, and we can reset the transform here. And we'll do the same thing for our text, okay? So very simple 3D extruded text and shapes. Right on screen, by default, we're enabling the C4D render engine. It's just easy, all right? It's very, very simple. And let's assume for a moment here, again, turn off that shape layer because we don't need that. Let's do just a really basic animation on this. So I'll go into my transform here, and I like the position of this. All right, let's just do a couple degrees here. Something like that. Okay. A little more pleasant. And this, now you can really see the extrusion going on there. Okay. So again, using Dynamic Link, which is a non-render technology for us that allows us to bring these animations that we build from After Effects into Premiere, if I were to go ahead and take this 3D comp, I can click and drag this into my project panel. I'll go ahead and stick it over here into this folder. Double click on this to bring it into the source monitor. Let's go ahead and drag me back to my previous window here. All right, so this is the animation coming from After Effects. All right, and I can drag this. Let's drag this over here. All right. Now you're saying, okay, well, yeah, you've got that background on there. Okay, so that's where this gets really cool. Back over to After Effects. Let's turn off that background. All right. Bounce back over to Premiere. Ooh, and there it is. All right. So, and again, if we were to use After Effects', let's go ahead and cache those frames so that the animation plays back in real time. So here's our 3D extruded text animation. Now back on the Premiere side, right? After Effects feeding Premiere Pro. So that's working with some basic 3D text coming from After Effects and using Dynamic Link to bring it into Premiere Pro. So now let's take this a little step further and kind of dive a little bit more into working with Cinema4D. Now again, I've got some very limited capabilities here. Lots of training, lots of tutorials, lots of way for you to get info on how to do this fully. But this is just going to show you once again the ease, simplicity, and smooth workflow of going between After Effects and Cinema4D Lite in this case. But the same process would apply whether you're going to Lite or the full version of Cinema4D. So in here I have a comp that was built for me, where we've got a shape layer, which is that circle, and we've got some flat 2D text flying in. In fact, that may have even used one of our presets, you know, fly in from camera or something like that. And I want to bring this into Cinema4D to not just extrude, but maybe add some of the different types of fluid motion and things that it allows you to do, different types of properties on 3D text and shapes. So what I can do directly from After Effects is I can go up to, with the comp selected here, again, using standard text, you can see these are standard text layers. All right, and then our ring is a shape layer, same shape layer that we just created when I just created that rectangle. Go up to the File menu. Oh, and here, I'll switch my camera again, so I'm in the right place so you can see what I'm doing. And under Export, I'm going to choose Maxon Cinema4D Exporter, okay? So what this is going to do is this is going to create a C4D file, and then we're going to be able to establish that linked relationship between After Effects and Cinema4D. So just in a similar way as you saw where I made a change in After Effects, you know, dragged the files into Premiere, saw it, changed something else, it updates. You can establish that same type of link, similar type of link between After Effects and Cinema4D. So let's choose Maxon Cinema4D Exporter. And what this is telling us is that some 2D layers were found. These will not be exported. That's legit. That's fine. Yes, we only want the 3D stuff to go over to Cinema4D so that we can do more 3D with it. Click OK. Now, this is where you have to make a choice. I want to extrude text as shapes because, one, I want the highest fidelity export, but also I'm merely going into C4D not to change any of that text, but to, or rather, not to modify the font and the content of the text. I'm going over there to modify the 3D itself as if it were an object. So you can choose whether you want to extrude text as shapes or keep the text and preserve it as editable. For this, I'm going to use extrude text as shapes. Click OK, and it's going to ask us to give it a name. So I created one earlier. Let me go ahead and we'll call this 641 HTM2. Very simple name to remember, of course. All right, and click OK on that. All right, so now I've got a blank canvas inside of After Effects. Let's go ahead and import that file that we just created, all right, which is right here. So you can see today, just made 1 minute ago, okay? HTM2 C4D. So we're actually building a Cinema4D file, exporting a C4D file directly from After Effects. Go ahead and click Open here. All right. And let's drag the Cinema4D file into the comp, okay? Now what you're going to see by default is that After Effects is going to open up the Cineware panel. Now, again, this is this is and can get fairly advanced. And we're not going to really cover the Cineware panel. But what this does is this is one more sort of level of integration where the Cineware panel and Cinema4D are sort of talking to each other. And you can control certain elements of particularly the render and the display on screen here of what it is that you've built in Cinema4D once you're working in After Effects. And I'll just kind of scrub through this. We're in a software rendering mode, which is why it looks so blocky as I'm dragging. Again, kind of like an adaptive resolution, which you've probably worked with in After Effects before. But you can see now that it has basically preserved the 3D text, 3D shape layer there. But now we're viewing this as a Cinema4D file. Okay, well, I want to do more with this. I want to do more with this in C4D proper. So with the layer selected here, let's go up to the Edit menu, or again, you can do Command or Control E, Classic Edit Original, and it launches Cinema4D Lite. Scary place. Scary place if you've never been here before. It isn't. And I've learned to, especially after meeting with a lot of the Maxon crew, it's one of those things. It's pretty intimidating initially. There's tons of great training out there on how to get started in here. First and foremost, let's just go to the play button here so you can see once again that it took what you just saw in After Effects, all right, and basically recreated that as a C4D file that we're now going to be able to play with, okay? So what do we want to do with this? Well, I was thinking that since it says waveform, maybe we could add something like a wave animation to those 3D objects, to the 3D text there. Again, I'm just to kind of showcase the pipeline, the connection between the two apps here. So let's do that. So if I go up to what is effectively your layers panel, all right, let's go ahead and twirl this down and twirl down the text layers here, waveform. All right, and actually let me go ahead. Yeah, you should. Here, I'm going to move my camera over again so I'm not in the way. There we go. Cool. And up at the top here, under Bend, you can see you can add bend objects. If I hold this down and click on it, you can see that you can do bend, bulge, shear, taper, twist, explosion, and that is just that, kind of like particle style explosion. Formula, or what do I want? Wind. Let's go ahead and choose wind. Go ahead and choose wind. And it adds this wind property. Now I want this wind object to affect the wave text. So you can see if I want it to affect the letters of wave, I'm dragging it down. I want to make sure that the arrow is pointing down, that the wind affects the layers below, just like that, okay? And now under object properties, you've got a whole different series of parameters that you can adjust, okay? So the amplitude is quite high there at 50. Let's go ahead and kind of dial that back a bit. We want it to be wavy, but not crazy wavy. You can adjust the size. That we can increase maybe a little bit. The frequency, the turbulence, maybe not too turbulent for wave, and that'll work there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing under the form text. Okay. And I'll just set it slightly differently here. Okay. Very simple settings, very simple adjustments. Let's go ahead and play this. All right. And now you can see everything's moving. Now, again, what if I want form to be moving even more, so we can increase the frequency here. And let's make it even more turbulent too. Just so that it's very, very noticeable, okay? Who wants to hire me to do their graphic design and animation? Right. Okay, you get the idea. We've done some cool stuff here. And also notice the performance in this app is amazing. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to save the change that we just made there. Now remember, we sent this file from the After Effects comp to Cinema4D. We're modifying it here, but the two are linked together. So when I click back over to After Effects, notice right away it updates so that you can see that those wavy changes have been applied. And under Render, I'm actually just going to go into a standard draft mode so that it looks a bit better. Let's go ahead and wind this back and go ahead and play here in After Effects. And now, just as we saw with dragging the After Effects comp into Premiere, using the Export Cinema 4D Render option, now all the stuff that we're doing in Cinema 4D, we're seeing here live in After Effects. Super, super freaking cool. And you have this constant back and forth where you can really make some amazing, amazing 3D creations. And now you have all the power and flexibility of a true 3D pipeline, whether you just want to do basic text and shapes or even more, leveraging the render engine natively in After Effects from Cinema 4D, or sending the entire comp with its 3D layers to Cinema 4D to do, again, advanced, texturing, lighting, reflections, all of those kinds of things, and then leveraging the Cineware panel here, all right? So that's a little bit on 3D text and shapes and working with Cinema 4D and After Effects together. Okay, I was going to go into 360, but let's end with 360. And let's just briefly talk, since we're kind of in this animation world now, briefly talk about Character Animator. So Character Animator, for those of you unfamiliar, we are now in beta 6. And this is an application that allows you to bring 2D and 3D Photoshop or Illustrator character images to life. So if you create characters, animation characters, illustrated characters in Photoshop or Illustrator, you can then animate those and do some really amazing things with Character Animator. Now, I just want to point out, first of all, to make these characters work, again, all they are is layered Photoshop files or Illustrator files. How do you make those? All right, well, first, this one is already created. Her name is Maddie. This was a photorealistic one, actually photographed from a true 3D model. This is really, really cool. If you want it to work and move with you and have your lips move with it, you need to set your rest pose. So I'm going to look into my camera here, set a rest pose. And what you'll see is that if you've ever worked with After Effects and you've used our face tracker, you'll see that it's tracking my eyes, my nose, my mouth, the shape of my face, my eyebrows. Okay, that's frightening. It's tracking everything. So when I do that, let's go ahead and make this bigger. It's also tracking on screen. Now, it will also do mouth, lip sync as well. And I've got a separate microphone for that. So let me go ahead and turn this up. So now when I talk, Maddie, hello, how are you all? You can now see that her mouth is following the movements that I'm making. And this character happens to have the ability to allow you to pick her arms up and do the wave, or, walk like an Egyptian. Anybody remembers that from the 80s? That was the Bangles. Okay, you can have hours of fun just playing with these characters. Notice it even turns heads. So this was kind of some new stuff that we added in some of the various betas. Really, really cool, really easy to do. In this latest release of Character Animator, we also introduced something called walk cycles. This was kind of a limitation before, where if you wanted the character to walk, you actually had to go over to After Effects and do that. But now, using keyboard shortcuts, you actually have the ability to let your character walk based on how you have the legs rigged. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Just to kind of show you, though, here, using the arrow keys, you've got a couple different methods of walking, including walking, slumping, strutting, prancing, sneaking, that's my favorite, running, and you can tell our engineers have a good sense of humor, head banging. So if we do something like sneak, well, let me just show you walking first, very simple walking. Again, you don't even have to do anything. Once you have legs rigged, it understands how this all works. And you can see you can start it by using the left and right arrow keys. I'm going to do just that, and I can have Maddie walk across the screen. All right. Now, the product manager for this, Dave Werner, has some amazing tutorials on how to do everything you need to know about Character Animator. So I highly recommend checking out Dave Werner on YouTube, and you can find a lot of his tutorials again on the CC YouTube channel and all throughout YouTube. But if we go to something like Sneak, just to kind of show you some of the funny things you can do with these characters. Right, there's a little sneak walk. I've got a little one. That's kind of a walk he implements a lot. Here's the headbang. I don't know what that is. That's an odd one. Some of these walk cycles look better than others. Here's a prance. Just kind of gliding. All right. It's a lot of fun. Now, here's what I want to show you. You're probably thinking, okay, yeah, but someone built that character for you. This is way too difficult. How do you do this at all? All right. Well, this was something that we also introduced. Rather than having workspaces, you have workspace modules. So the first one is Start. So first of all, we have an interactive tutorial. And I really want to point this out because if you're thinking about doing character animation, if this is something that you're interested in, there are many ways to do it. Yes, people traditionally have done it in After Effects forever and in other applications for that matter. But again, typically your characters are built up, drawn, illustrated in Photoshop and Illustrator. This is going to walk you through the whole process of building one. We even give you template puppets. That's right, pre-built ones. So this is Chloe, Wendigo, and Finn. This was the original, one of the originals. Actually, the Red Monster, I think, was the very first, and you've seen that in some of our marketing. I've even worn the shirt on a couple of the live streams we've done here. So, oh, and there's a walkbot. So again, this is a new, oh, there's the Red Monster right there. And look, as you click on him, you can see he animates a little bit. He's actually the original, the first character that was created for this. So, and this again, this walkbot profile view, robot with a walk cycle, nutcracker jaw, and blinking lights. There's all kinds of amazing things you can do via keyboard triggers to really do very advanced animations inside Character Animator. The cool thing is that this Start module is going to show you how to do it. So you can open an interactive tutorial, then watch additional video tutorials to show you how to use all those elements. And then even if you're not a creator, like by the way, I drew myself in Photoshop and rigged it, just line drawing, and made it work. I'll refrain from showing that to you, but it kind of it looked somewhat similar. Again, just lines, easy to draw long hair and eyes, you know. Next, you have the rigging. And here is where, again, if you look over into the puppet panel, this is effectively your layers. This is your layers panel, okay? And all of your layers are appropriately named, again, based on the parts of the body. Now, what I want to showcase to you here is that in the properties panel here, oh, well, first of all, we also just added blend modes. So you can see we've actually got the red monster living inside of the center panel here. And now if I kind of hover over blend modes, I can change them on screen here very easily. Again, all the same blend modes that you know from Photoshop. And you can now use blend modes in your characters. What's even easier is now we have object tagging, so that before you had to know all these naming conventions to rig up your characters. Again, it wasn't that it was complex. It was complex. It was just there were rules that you needed to follow, and you kind of needed to know those to make it work at all. Now you can bring these layered Photoshop files in. You don't have to worry about naming them with all these special, because it was like equals, parenthesis, exclamation point, close parenthesis. That was how you denoted something was a leg before, whatever it was. Now you can select, you can select your left arm layer, and you can then go into here and tell it, okay, yep, that's my left arm, or more specifically, that's my left wrist, okay, or the elbow, or whatever it is, and just tag these things, and it will do that for you inside this rigging module. Super cool. So you've got the Start module to get you started, the rigging module, and then you've got the recording module, and then you have, we're not going to get into this now, but a streaming module. So if any of you caught Adobe Max last year, or for that matter, if you're a fan of The Simpsons, and you remember that The Simpsons had a live episode last year where they did this live character. Homer was at a desk taking Q&A from the audience. That was done with Character Animator. And in fact, part of the reason that we even have that streaming capability was because of The Simpsons. Okay? So again, if you're doing, YouTube live streaming, Twitch live streaming, whatever, you can actually stream this out, stream out the character itself, not the window of you talking and everything, and do a live performance with a puppet. Okay? See, you can it's just so fun to play with these things and move them around. And have her walk and sneak away. Goodbye, Maddie. Oh, wait, no, she's coming back. Okay. So now, in this latest version of Character Animator, under Export, this is actually really cool because you'll see that you have the option here to export via Adobe Media Encoder, or you can do sort of the classic ping sequence and wave. You've got obvious live options here. So just more flexibility when working and bringing those elements, again, into After Effects. Okay, and what was I going to show you here? There's something else I was going to show you. Oh, yeah, you can even see, like, you know, under here, under your scripts, new comp from Character Animator recording. So just a lot of flexibility here, additional options for export. All right, so that's a little bit on Character Animator. We're going to close today with the world of 360 VR and most recently introduced to Premiere Pro, Ambisonic Spatial Audio. Probably don't have to tell any of you what that's all about. You know now that 360 video supported on right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, right inside the browser on your app, on your phone. Also, of course, if you've got a headset, goggles, you can now create, edit, and author 360 VR content inside of Premiere Pro very, very easily using, you know, most, if not, you know, most of the available 360 cameras out there today. So I've got a couple different examples I wanted to show you here very quickly. Working with 360 is easier than ever before. Part of that is because, well, we've implemented a lot of things for Premiere Pro to be auto-aware of the type of VR content that you're shooting. Now, this particular piece that I have here, so I shot this with a Samsung Gear 360. That's the camera I have. Fairly inexpensive. It is a 4K 360 camera. One of the first really popular ones was the Ricoh Theta. Now, that's a 1080p camera, but you see that all over the web. And again, a lot of the people who were kind of doing this a year ago had that Ricoh camera. The great thing is that you can just bring 360 footage into Premiere Pro, and if you take that footage and you right-click or control-click on it, and you say New Sequence from Clip, Premiere Pro automatically knows what to do. Now, I just want to point out some of the new sequence settings that we have, because we've made this even easier. Oh, let me just reset the workspace here again. There we go. We've made it even easier to allow you to select the proper sequence settings and to really sort of understand what's happening before you even begin editing. So at the bottom of the project panel, and by the way, if you don't see all these panels on your in your Premiere Pro, you can switch your workspace. I'm in the editing workspace. You can also find panels under the window menu. If I click on the new item icon here, let's go into the sequence menu. And new in this latest release of Premiere Pro, you'll see that we have sequence presets for VR, both monoscopic and stereoscopic. So a lot of people have been asking, does Premiere Pro support 3D stereoscopic VR? And the answer is yes, it does. And I've got a couple of examples of that to show you here. So whether you're working in monoscopic, which this footage that I shot was, or stereoscopic, if you twirl these down, you'll see that we have a whole series of common presets based on sort of the cameras of the day. This 3840-1920, that actually happens to be the resolution of the Gear 360. It's not 3840-2160. Which some people have pointed out. But again, still, you can notice I've got a little letterboxing going. I love that look anyway. It makes it look a little more cinematic. And then you have options to use these with Ambisonic Audio. Ambisonic Audio now adds that additional spatial audio reference to your 360 content. So if you're in headphones, now you don't even need like a VR headset to be able to hear your Ambisonic Audio once it's played back via the web or whatever. Ambisonic is a 4-channel format that we're currently, well, there's multiple flavors of it, but currently we support the 4-channel flavor of Ambisonic Audio. This can be captured with a number of different devices. One of the really popular ones right now is the Zoom H2n, which does it for you, creates and encodes these AmbiX files for you that you can bring directly into Premiere Pro and drag right into the timeline, and we just know what to do with it. Similarly with stereoscopic, if we twirl this down, you can see a lot of the various options here. Again, all the way up to like 8K. I mean, you know, and again, you can build different ones. These are just preset suggestions, right? You've got a lot of flexibility here with how you work. So these are all the various preset options that we give you. Now, one thing I want to point out when you're working with Ambisonics specifically is that you have to make a change to how Premiere Pro handles adaptive audio media. Or rather, under Premiere Pro's audio preferences, we have an option how to handle multi-channel mono media. The track option has to be set to adaptive. This is very, very crucial if you want your ambisonic audio tracks, audio files to work. Where do you find that option? Premiere Pro, Preferences, or on the PC, Edit, Preferences, Audio. And under Default Audio Tracks, here, multi-channel monomedia, you want to set that to adaptive. Oh, sorry, that's getting cut off. Set that to adaptive. And once you do that, then you will know that your ambisonic 4-channel audio files will import and they will work properly inside of Premiere. Okay. So again, once you have your media though inside of Premiere Pro, you don't even have to go to the sequence menu. As I showed you, you can just right-click, control-click, new sequence from clip, and it'll build the sequence for you. Now, what we're looking at here is just kind of what's known as the equirectangular frame. This is the flavor of 360 VR that Premiere Pro desires, okay? Equirectangular. Now, there's lots of applications out there that will take this equirectangular or raw, unstitched 360 content and create the equirectangular frame that Premiere needs. Some of the cameras do it automatically, like the Nikon Key Mission automatically does the stitching, spits out equirectangular media, drop it right into Premiere Pro and start editing. Other cameras like the Samsung Gear 360, they have their own third-party app that they package with the Gear 360 for you to do that stitching, but you do it externally. You have to do it after you've done recording. And I have some options here where I can show you some of the unstitched media as well. And then there's also other applications like Metal Skybox, and that's METTLE, that will allow you to take any kind of raw 360 content from all the various cameras out there, and they'll do their own stitching. They have their own capabilities to do stitching within Metal Skybox as well. And that's a great investment if you're going to be working a lot in 360 and VR, particularly in After Effects and Premiere. So to enable this for 360 viewing inside of Premiere Pro's Program Monitor, you need to turn on the VR viewer, which is this icon that you see down here, Toggle VR Video Display. Now, that button, I don't believe, is enabled by default. So how do you get that button into your Program Monitor? You want to go into the button editor, which you can find here. That's the little plus sign that we see over here, and you can see the tooltip there, button editor. So go ahead and click on the button editor, look for that VR video display, and simply click and drag that down into your buttons panel right there. And when you do that, I've already got it in there, of course, turn on the VR video display, and now we can just click and drag inside the Program Monitor, and we are seeing 360. And I'll go ahead and let me just turn down the audio here. This is me driving in the car in the desert. All right, play this back. And you can see that I can move and manipulate my 360 content as it's playing. Again, this is using some of that uninterrupted playback technology in Premiere. All right, there's me in my Mickey shirt driving. Very safe. By the way, I'm using the iPhone there to capture secondary audio. So you can see down here, I've got this other M4A file. That was generated directly out of the voice recorder app on the iPhone, and then just synchronized to the camera audio. The reason I didn't want to use the camera audio is because, as you can see here, I've got the Gear 360. You can't see it. It's in the stitching center here, so it's kind of getting eliminated. You can see it in my rear view, in my side mirror though. It's mounted on the door of the car. All right, so that audio, of course, has just like a ton of wind. It's just, it doesn't sound great. So again, you've got a lot of flexibility here with just bringing the content in, and then of course all of your editing capabilities, whether you're simply just cutting. So I can choose my razor tool and cut down below in here, and I can lift to just move pieces of this around, drag things together, add different types of transitions. I'll just do a quick, I know you can't see me adding this dissolve, but I could add a dissolve here, all right, and kind of dissolve between the cuts. As you get more advanced into effects and things, this is where metal skybox becomes essential, because if you're wanting to, say, project 3D text into the sphere, you can't do that here in Premiere Pro natively without the assistance of something like metal skybox. Again, and that actually will allow you to do some of that from within Premiere. Generally, you're doing that on the After Effects side with that plugin, and you can either render or dynamically link those two together. But yeah, you've seen a lot of 360 content, I'm sure, where they're sort of projecting video inside of video, but it's conforming to that 360 space. Again, that's largely done with the metal skybox plugin, all of which is supported here though. But you can do some basic things with this. And again, the editing process is exactly the same. It's kind of cool there because you can see how, you know, as I turned the corner, the sky went from very, very blue right there to like super blown out in this other area. And you can create and tell your story and just edit very, very seamlessly. What's nice is it's not even like a jump because the angle is the exact same, right? The capture angle was identical because the camera was just mounted on my door. That's a great stop frame of me. Okay, so that's working with some very basic 360 content. Now what about, and that's monoscopic. What about stereoscopic? Okay, so here I've got some stereoscopic content. Now this was filmed by my buddy Dave Helmling. And how do we know this is stereoscopic? Well, first of all, if you look at sort of the raw media here, I never generally turn this panel on, but in the preview area, you can see that the dimensions are 2880 by 2880, and this is what we call over-under. There's also side-by-side stereoscopic. Anybody who's worked in 3D knows this. Over-under, side-by-side, we support both of those. And this is also stereoscopic 360. So here inside the viewer, this looks like, again, just regular 360, right? Well, that's because we're not viewing this in sort of a stereoscopic method, namely the anaglyph preview method. So to do that, to actually preview the 3D stereoscopic flavor of this inside the program monitor, click on the wrench menu here, go into VR video, under settings, and you'll see under our VR video settings, we can choose anaglyph. And when I turn that on now, if we had our 3D glasses, our blue-red glasses, we would now see this and be able to experience this in 3D stereoscopic 360. So here we are with our ambisonic audio. Note 4 channels down below. Okay, so what do we do with this? How do we hear this? Well, if you're sitting in Premiere Pro and you're wearing headphones and you're listening back, by default, actually, you're not going to hear that ambisonic audio. You need to actually enable a new little effects plugin that we give you called the binauralizer. What ambisonic audio, what spatial audio really is, what the playout is something that's known as binaural audio. And this is something that's been around, actually, it was developed, if you can believe, at the end of the 19th century. We actually had some albums made with it in the 70s. Lou Reed had one of the first actual records made that was recorded and decoded in binaural. But this is why you only need stereo headphones to experience it, because what it does is it captures audio the way that the human head, the ears, hear it. In this case, with 4 native channels, but it uses this special decoding method so that you can really experience audio all around you with 2 speakers, in this case, headphones. You really need headphones to feel this, and that's why if you're in goggles with stereo phones, you're gonna have an incredible 360 ambisonic spatial experience. But to hear that when you're editing and previewing, you wanna go up to your master track inside of your audio track mixer, twirl this down under Special. We're going to go to the binauralizer, all right? Now, if I were to just play this back, if you look at our 4-channel level meters here, you can see that we've got audio on, again, across the 4 channels. Let's go ahead and add that binauralizer. What is that going to do? Well, now what you're going to see is that it's only showing you the audio in 2 channels, and that's by default. Now, by the way, this is just to be left on for preview. When you export this to YouTube, this is it'll automatically take that 4-channel ambisonic audio and binauralize it so that it's properly delivered once you're watching this with your video on YouTube, okay? But what this allows you to do is really identify if your ambisonic audio microphone was positioned properly with the sort of start position of your video. In other words, there's lots of different ways to capture ambisonics. There's actually self-contained 4-channel microphones. Sennheiser makes one. I mentioned the H2N. But there's also a method where you just use 4 omnidirectional and or cardioid or different polar pattern positioned microphones, 4 independent mics to capture sound. You want to make sure that when you import this, that the direction when you're facing front is exactly what you're hearing. So that, you know, front is front and back is back. It's very easy to get those reversed, particularly if you're using one of those kind of self-contained units. So the binauralizer allows you to adjust, you can see here, the actual pan position in degrees. Now, how do you follow the two? Well, if you go into your VR video and we unhide the controls here, again, this is kind of our starting point. If I wanted to hear what the audio sounded like, let's say, at minus 180 degrees, I could dial in the same position here and play this back. Now, again, I'm not playing the audio for you over the stream here. It's not really important for the moment. But the idea is that you'd be able to test whether or not this sounded exactly like that. In fact, you know what? Let me go ahead. I'll turn it on for you so you can hear it. Go. Focus right. So if you're listening in headphones, you'll actually be able to hear this. I know I can't hear it now, but you can. And as I move this around, the audio as I'm moving that around, you should hear it sort of shifting position. Okay? In this very strange spatial kind of way. All right? Now you notice you also have tilt and roll. Again. Okay? You can modify the preview position to know if you need to make a change. Now, if you actually need to make a destructive change to that, at the track level, let's say track 2 here, we can go into Special Ambisonic Panner. Okay, now you can do it here on the track, or you can actually do it at the clip level. So I'm going to choose the panner here. Don't mind that you can't see me typing it. Go into Effects Controls. Here's the Ambisonic Panner. And here's how you now have the ability to actually make those corrections that we were previewing with the binauralizer effect. You can make those corrections here. You can even keyframe those changes here. Okay? So again, you've got a lot of flexibility. This gets a bit complex. I just did a training tutorial on working with ambisonics and actually 360 on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JasonLevineVideo. They're short, they're get to it. I highly recommend checking that out, particularly for ambisonic audio, if you want to know how to edit and work with this content inside of Premiere. So, but that's basically the workflow. And when you're ready to export this, let's just assume everything's correct anyway. You want to make sure that you take off the binauralizer, just remove it. You can also defeat it, disable the effect. I just recommend taking it off here. You can't export with that on. Again, that's for preview when you're inside the app. So when you're ready to export with our timeline selected, our sequence selected, go to File, Export Media. And again, you can export these directly to YouTube. Once again, now if you're using ambisonic audio, of course, you can go to YouTube. You can also go to Facebook. You'll notice that you'll want to choose H.264 for your format if you're going to the web for those. We have presets here, Facebook, YouTube, and then a whole series of specific VR presets as well. So in the case of this one, it would be VR over under 2880 ambisonics because this is that particular kind of content. What's cool about that is when you choose that, all right, because we are auto-aware, as mentioned before, inside the media encoder, it automatically knows the video is VR and it knows the frame layout. Again, here's that side-by-side option. If that's how it were configured, it would know that it was side-by-side. And additionally, if you go under Audio, Settings, Channels 4, bitrate 512 is the standard that YouTube wants, the bitrate for ambisonic audio, and then audio is ambisonics. So when you publish that to YouTube, whether you go directly via the Publish tab here, and you can publish directly to your YouTube channel right from within Media Encoder, or you upload it after the fact, you're now going to know that your audio has proper ambisonics. It'll be displayed that way, and everything's just going to work really brilliantly. So, what did we talk about today? Well, 360, VR, Ambisonics, Monoscopic and Stereoscopic, 3D text using the Cinema4D render engine inside of After Effects natively without leaving the application, or further 3D text and shape layer creation and animation using Cinema4D Lite, which is integrated directly into After Effects. And then we kicked everything off working with 2D in Photoshop by bringing in Photoshop layers and animating those in Premiere and in Photoshop and preserving the animations. And we also talked about doing character animation, bringing 2D and 3D characters to life, sourced from original Photoshop and Illustrator files from within Character Animator CC Beta, all of which can be accessed from the CC desktop app. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine. Hope you enjoyed episode 5. We'll see you next week for episode 6. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.